Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to do the weekly horoscope for the 2nd of February to the 8th of February, and I'm going to talk about the main themes of the week and then also talk about how this horoscope affects your rising sign. So the major themes for this week is that February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in the second house. Uranus is sort of starting to finish its period being in Taurus before it moves back into Gemini, which we got a little bit of a glimpse of last year, and it's going to stay there. So Uranus in Taurus is a difficult placement. It's debilitated. I always find that when Uranus is in Taurus, there tends to be a lot of volatility in the stock market, and people are very shrewd about the economy. Obviously, this happens throughout our history, so it's not like every time Uranus is in Taurus that's the only time it happens, but it's a little bit more apparent in the news. People get panic buy and they panic sell. For example, recently there's been a real sort of panic buy of metals, things like copper, gold, silver. Even some people are starting to think about maybe I should buy things like uranium. So there's definitely a little bit of, curiosity, maybe fear around the stock market. I personally have stocks I invest, and let me tell you, I'm like, what is it about? You know what I mean? It's like, wow, if you have stock, you know, because you're like, and every time Uranus goes into Taurus or it goes in and out, it's difficult. When Uranus was back in Gemini, I was living life, living it up. I was like, man, I'm so rich, I can afford anything I want, right? And then Uranus goes back in Taurus, and I'm like, yeah, I knew it's going to happen. It also always coincides with Trump doing something stupid. So yeah, Uranus is a planet of shock and volatility, actually. It's normally a planet that you can consider to be very free and a little bit controversial. It is an outer planet, so it's external. It doesn't affect our personality or, how we feel personally, but it is very externally shocking, hence why I'm talking about things like the stock market, because we personally can't change the stock market. I can't just be like, yeah, I am going to just click my fingers and then the stock market is going to do what I want. It's really an external thing that we have to react to. We have to either hold our money, sell it, or then consider other options. So Uranus in Taurus specifically, because Taurus is associated with financial abundance, luxury. It's also very stubborn as well. So that's when it gets us to, externally it tests us about, do we want to hold this money or do we want to keep it? And again, it doesn't have to be about the stock market. It can sometimes be around, the people in our lives that we think are looking out for us so we can rely on, and then actually we realise, no, the rug has been pulled out from under us. We cannot rely on them. And again, this is going to be the last time that Uranus goes direct in this sign for quite some time. So we're going to use this as an opportunity to be grounded, to understand where our roots are, and also to kind of have an open mind, because Uranus is not necessarily a very stubborn planet, which is why these two don't go very well together. So we can't let the stubbornness kind of get in our way, or that phrase, don't let pride get in the way, don't let stubbornness get in the way. So it's important to be a little bit more sort of free flowing with this particular transit. The next thing is that February 6th, Mercury enters Pisces. So there's a lot of Pisces energy this month. There always is in February and March, but what is really important about this particular Mercury transit is that we will have a Mercury retrograde this month. So February 11th onwards, we start to enter the pre-shadow period for the retrograde. So we only really get sort of 5 days of Mercury being in Pisces and not really having a problem. So obviously Mercury in Pisces is great for Valentine's Day because it's very creative, it's very sort of imaginative, and one might say quite poetic and soulful. I got a Pisces moon, so I'm always like, yeah, I think Pisces generally is like that. It's quite loving, it's very emotionally intellectual, and it's also a little bit sensitive. So take note, if you do have a Pisces Mercury natally, then you might feel a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more grounded in your words, and you maybe want to tell people things, but you also have to be mindful that that is then going to be affected by the fact that we will have Mercury stationing retrograde in Pisces, which is going to be extra sensitive and emotional. It's very similar to something like Mercury in Leo, which is, takes everything very personally. So it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It is a debilitated placement. So we do have 2 debilitated themes this week, but it's not like this is the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just, you probably need to be a little bit more careful about doing presentations and having events where you've got to speak and it's very logical, or your whole life hinges on it. I would just be mindful of that. Obviously, February is going to be a pretty wild month. We've got a solar eclipse in Aquarius, Saturn enters Aries. We've already got Neptune stationed in Aries now. So there's a lot of energy alongside the retrograde that especially fixed signs might be like, Jesus, I'm getting whipped across the rocks here. And it is pretty kind of month. But I think if we can, you know, remain open-minded, then everything will be okay. I'm telling myself, I'm trying to reassure myself, because like the past month, what did I do in a past life to deserve some of the stuff that's been thrown at me? I don't know, but I'm sat and ruled, so I guess it's just like, hey. Also, I said the other day to somebody, I could take a bullet and I don't think I'd feel it at this point, because I'm like, you know what? What is love? What is pain? Don't know. Feel numb. So if you feel a little bit like life's not going my way, you're not on your own. I think we're in very difficult times right now. There's a lot of issues going on around the world. You know, we're absorbing all the world's news and feeling very sensitive over it. And we're not meant to. Humans are not meant to absorb this amount of news, right? You're not really meant to care about more than like 150 people at a time, right? Like back in the day, we would care about the villagers and there'd be like a town cry that's like, we're all gonna die. And we'd be like, oh my God. But we'd only know about the village or the next village up. We'd only hear about more people if there was war coming. So when we hear about things, it kind of sets our primal fight or flight on. Something bad's about to happen. We're hearing about towns, you know, 1, 2, 3 towns over, but we shouldn't be hearing about. We only hear about that because something is coming at us, right? So if you do feel extra sensitive, it's normal. It's a human response. It's just a very difficult time. Okay, so this is what this week's horoscope means for your rising sign. You can watch for your sun and moon as well. That's completely fine, especially for like an overall context. But I would say that rising is going to be more accurate because I talk about very specific houses in the chart. So if you are in Aries rising February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your second house. So as I've talked about, Uranus is very shocking and it does not like to be in Taurus in the second house of your finances, your stability. It's a very confident house. So this can sometimes get you to be a little bit more open-minded about what brings you confidence, where your money is right now, but also how you feel about your stability and your roots. So is where you are where you want to be. And because Neptune is now in Aries in the first house, you have a little bit more of that, what is the truth around what my identity is, and putting that together with your finances. Is that what I really want? February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 11th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the second house. This is where you can make a very simple mistake with somebody else in like a group, and it can really throw everything off. So you would need to double check something like an email or a correspondence with somebody. So don't tell a group of people, yeah, I'll get that to you like today, and then you realize you haven't even looked over what you're meant to be doing, and it can be misleading because one wrong sort of move, as it were, again, I'm not saying this to scare you, but it's more like be detail orientated before Mercury goes into Pisces. One wrong move can sort of chain of events, especially when it comes to you feeling safe and secure where you are. It can be like, oh, you know, when your heart drops and you're like, I haven't done what I thought I was meant to do, sorry. And then it's like, actually, I'm about to get bollocked for this. So just be mindful. February the 6th, Mercury then enters Pisces in your 12th house. So Mercury in Pisces in the 12th house, because I have a Mercury natal in the 12th house. So I know what this particular kind of placement can do. It does encourage you to be more spiritual and more emotional with your communication. I know that maybe you might be watching and you're like, but maybe I'm not the most emotional person. I don't really know how to work with this type of Mercury transit. Well, actually, it's about being as sensitive as you want to be. So maybe that can be, instead of I'm going to be physical touch, I'm going to be words of affirmation, or I'm going to be gift giving, I'm going to do something that feels both nostalgic and sentimental. So something that feels a little bit more imaginative. And you know, when you get a present and someone goes, you know, it's just really the thought that counts. That's the kind of energy that Mercury and Pisces are trying to bring you in that 12th house, which is more spiritual, more hidden. You might find that your communication is a little bit more reserved, or maybe you're like, I'm scared to say certain things. It's really because you probably don't know how to express it. So maybe it's playing around with things and thinking, okay, maybe I want to send a letter. Maybe I want to send a text. Maybe I want to speak. I want to go outside and have a boombox and say, I love you. You know, something where you're experimenting with the different ways of communication. Again, with Mercury and Pisces in that 12th house, probably not the best time to express a truth that's really, really been hidden down. I think that's probably not the best time. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 11th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the second house. Not the most romantic day, you know. It's a little bit difficult. It's a bit sort of nervous, like, you know, I'm jittery, or like, oh, you made me stutter, you know, like, boy, you make me stutter. It's very sort of I can't compromise, I don't really know what's going on, Mercury's now in Pisces, so I kind of get my words out, you know, that kind of thing. And you have to almost pull yourself back and look after yourself. Mercury in that 12th house is more reserved. This kind of energy is saying, everything I do is probably not going to land. Maybe I just pull away a little bit on this particular day. If you are a Taurus, then this month is pretty major for you because there's a lot of fixed sign energy. I mean, we start off the month with February 1st forming in Leo, and then February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in your sign in the first house. It's the last time that Uranus will be going direct in that sign for quite some time. So use that as an opportunity to be open-minded about your own identity, because Uranus can shake your identity up. You know, you can change your appearance. You can be like, I want to change my goals. What I thought I wanted to do is not what I want to do. So allow that to flow. Don't get in the way, right? Because sometimes Taurus is a little bit stubborn, can get in the way and be like, no, it's my way, the highway. I want to do it this way. And the universe, Uranus, is trying to say, no, be open-minded. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in your 10th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that first house. So you can make a mistake at work on this day, or you could try to launch something and it doesn't quite go so well because there's a small little detail that you've missed. Maybe it's that you haven't double checked an email when you should have, you've showed up at the wrong time. It's really a day to say, I need to be crossing the T's and dotting the I's, be very detail orientated before Mercury goes into Pisces, because that can create major problems. I'm saying this for every zodiac sign because that's the energy that is coming to every zodiac sign. It'll just be in different ways. So for example, for you, it's more likely in your career. Other people might be like, you said something to a partner that you shouldn't have. So for you, it's much more your career and again, how you're seeing yourself. It could be a little bit of imposter syndrome. You thought everything was going to be okay, and then you thought, oh, this is teaching me that I need to be more prepared. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 11th house. So this is going to allow your communication with others to be more compassionate and sensitive. So this also shows to me that you will have to deal with a situation where somebody is probably opening up to you and you have to be a little bit more sort of sympathetic with them and say, oh, okay, I understand, yeah. Because especially the 11th house is a little bit more humanitarian. So it's about you having to put your own needs aside to help others. And Mercury in Pisces is quite, you know, imaginative in that way. So it's not the worst thing in the world, this particular placement in the 11th house. I think it's quite nice. And actually you can communicate in a very loving and thoughtful way. And that's really well received by others. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 10th house is squaring Uranus in Taurus in that first house. It's a little bit of an anxious, moody kind of day at work, perhaps, or something about project, or maybe people perceiving you in the wrong way, especially with Uranus being in the first house. And you just kind of feel like, again, you're being a bit extra stubborn for the sake of being stubborn on this day. And maybe you're trying to look out for yourself and you're not really yet taking the lessons that Mercury in Pisces is trying to bring, because, you know, it's only a couple of days after. But I do think that if you can put your stubbornness aside and understand that on this day, if you can compromise, if you can work with others, it's going to be more helpful. If you are a Gemini, then February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your 12th house. This is the last time that Uranus will be going direct in Taurus, where it's debilitated, and move into your sign, Gemini, later in the year. And that's going to be interesting for the whole world because Uranus is more external, so communication, social media applications, dating is going to be quite fascinating. But in regards to you and how the external events are, you know, sort of impacting you here in the 12th house, is that there is a little bit of volatility with your mental health. You could be feeling very rocky right now, and you have to keep an open mind about what your circumstances in life are trying to teach you right now, because it might feel like things are not necessarily going your way. But I've said, and I will continue to stick with this theme, is that this year for you, Gemini, is not going to be like the best, most amazing year because of things that will impact you, but at the same time, it's going to be the most energetic and intellectually stimulating year for you, which as a Gemini, you enjoy. So you will not be bored this year. This is kind of like almost getting you prepped and ready and making you mentally strong, allowing you to be releasing any stubbornness here, and then sort of going right, ready for Uranus going in my side, where my identity gets a real shake up. So it feels a little bit like the calm before the storm, to be honest. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in your 9th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 12th house. So this is where you could make a little bit of a mistake around studying. You could submit something in the wrong way. You could, book the wrong hotel for a travel, or, you have a big travel delay and there's an issue, and then it just causes a chain of events, like you miss a connecting flight, that kind of thing. And you really need to make sure that you double check everything. I'm saying this for every zodiac sign, but it's just manifesting in different ways. For you, it's something where it's like, I've should have double checked this and now I've ruined it and now I just feel so frustrated. I know what this kind of transit is trying to, you know, translate to me, which is that, say for example, this is just an example, say you book something that you're traveling for, you're like, I'm going to go here for the weekend, and then you end up getting the wrong date. You've booked it for like, I don't know, February next year instead, and then it's like, and this was meant to be that thing that was going to make you feel better about your mental health, that kind of thing. So just be more detail orientated is what I'm saying. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 10th house. So this is where your communication is more sensitive and more sort of emotionally intelligent. Mercury in Pisces is debilitating in the 10th house. So I wouldn't be, if you can avoid it, doing any job interviews or any major presentations, unless you are trying to appeal to people's empathy, like empathy marketing, where you're saying, well, if you buy this, then you can get home to your kids quicker, right? So something along those lines is what Mercury in Pisces does well. And it's also quite good if you're, you know, trying to say, yeah, you and I are friends. I know we work together, we're friends, right? And trying to push that along, but it's not logical and it's certainly not scientific. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 9th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 12th house. This definitely feels like you're coming across something that is very stubborn, and you're not able to really budge on it either. You're kind of like, why are you being so closed-minded? And then the person's like, why are you being so open-minded? And it's like, can't really get a match on that. So I think romances, friendships and business partnerships can be a little bit frosty on this day. If you are a Cancer, then February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your 11th house. This has brought a little bit of a shake-up to your friendships and maybe who you can trust. Also gets you to be a little bit open-minded with being social, the kind of groups of friends that you do have, but also the kinds of groups of people that you're working with, and maybe also testing your morals and values, especially because we're in a very fraught political climate. And I mentioned politics because Uranus is an external planet, so it's more about external things that are happening in our lives, where you thought you had a particular stance on something and now you've changed your mind. So it's a really good opportunity for you to understand that you don't have to have such rigid views on things, that you can change your mind when new information is presented to you, new circumstances are presented to you. And I think that's also the mark of, maybe intelligence, right? And critical thinking, because we're saying, well, I don't want to stand 10 toes down on something that doesn't really match me anymore, because I know I'm not the same person that I was maybe a year ago. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 8th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 11th house. So you could make a little mistake here with a group of people. It could definitely be associated with something like money. You could, for example, file for something and it's the wrong, I don't know, it has a wrong detail in it. You could try and take a loan out. It's not the right day to do it. I generally think for whatever this translates to in your life, because only you will know what this resonates to, right? You need to double check things. I'm saying this for every zodiac sign because I really feel this quite strongly, actually. Just double check, especially when it's pertaining to other people, because this is not isolated to, oh, I've made a mistake and this affects me. It's like this might affect other people too. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 9th house. So you as a Cancer are always a little bit more affected when Mercury enters a water sign, but particularly because there is going to be the pre-shadow period for the retrograde happening in about 5 days from this transit. So you kind of get yourself prepared for that emotion, especially if you have something like a Pisces moon, like I do. We have to kind of be prepared for that energy because it makes us really intuitive, and our communication is much more sensitive in that 9th house. I would say Mercury in the 9th house is not a nice place for it to be because it's far too detail orientated for something that sees the bigger picture. And so it can get very emotional. You know, when you just want to get something done straight away and then someone says, yeah, but think about what that's going to do in a year. And you're like, I don't care what it does in a year. I want to know how it fixes it now. And then you get really frustrated and the person's like, I'm just trying to help. And then it kind of all blows up. That's the kind of energy that Mercury in the 9th house is going to bring. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 8th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 11th house. It could be an issue with a friend where you're not able to compromise on something. It's not really like a major argument. It's just more a bit frosty, a bit anxious, a bit more like, oh, okay. Maybe you're not looking out for me the way I thought you were. Okay, what's going on here? It could be even related to Mercury being in Pisces, where it's like one person's trying to help you. You're like, yeah, but that's not what I want. And there's no compromise. So just be mindful that there's people in your life that are probably trying to help you, but maybe it's not coming across in the right way. It's more about thinking about people's intentions. And again, as I'm saying about Uranus being direct in Taurus, it's okay for people to not always come across the way that they had before, because intentions and feelings change quite rapidly, actually. If you are a Leo, then you just had a full moon in your sign, so let me know how you're feeling about that. Was it dramatic? Was it like pass without event? Sometimes moons just don't affect me. I wonder if it's because in my chart, I'm not very sort of moon heavy, and there's nothing really that I'm like, I don't really feel the moons that much. Only when it's like an Aries moon do I feel it. Other than that, I'm like, nah. It passes that event, really. Eclipses I feel, but most moons I don't feel. February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your 10th house. So as a fixed sign, this does affect you. So this is the last time Uranus will be direct in Taurus, which is where it's debilitated. So this has maybe caused a bit of volatility with your career, maybe got you to feel like you need to move for your career. It's very external. So it's more like, for example, I don't know, husband comes up and says, I got to move for work, and you don't really get a choice because you're like, well, I can't not move with him, so then I have to change my career as well. That's sort of what Uranus presents in the 10th house. It can also give you different co-workers and different projects to work with, maybe even a different boss or line manager. So keep an open mind around your career during this time. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 7th house. A lot of 7th house activity for you still, squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 10th house. There could be a little bit of a mistake here at work where maybe you've missigned something in a contract, or you need to double check an email, because if you don't, you might have said, yeah, I've got this all secured, and then you've missed something where the person's come back and said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So just be very detail orientated with groups of people that you're working with, contracts, and anything related to your career. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 8th house. This is really nice for heartfelt communication with somebody that you have some intimacy with. So especially if you're telling somebody that I would really like to be more connected to you, and you do it in a very thoughtful way. It's very sort of longing, yearning energy, Mercury in the 8th house in Pisces. Very much like, I want to write a poem. And you know, Leos rule the physical heart. So, you know, emotion is quite strong here. And this can feel extra sensitive. So it's a nice time to open up and tell somebody that you want to, you know, maybe be a little bit more intimate or have a connection, but also it's not the best time to take out a loan or try to open a joint bank account, because as I said before, with the detail orientation, Mercury and Pisces is not great for doing that. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 7th house, which is lovely, is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 10th house, which is not so lovely. It's a bit frosty romantically, because Venus squaring Uranus, it's like, it's very anxious kind of aspect. There definitely could be a fight with a partner, or maybe there's a little bit of a kind of frosty communication with somebody at work, or maybe it's like a frosty communication with someone you work with because of the issue that happened on the 5th. So just be mindful of that. If you are a Virgo, then February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your 9th house. So last time Uranus would be direct in this sign. I don't necessarily dislike Uranus in the 9th house. I think it's a good place for it to be. The reason being is that Uranus is very independent. It likes freedom. It's very controversial and spontaneous. And so is the 9th house. So this is very open-minded. I think this is actually pretty good. So you probably don't have as much of a difficult time with Uranus as maybe other signs are, where it's more in like a rooted house, like Aries, for example, where it's in the 2nd house, not a good place for it to be. So this is a nice sign for change when it comes to studying, traveling as well, the spontaneity of maybe wanting to travel and have new experiences. So let yourself be open-minded with those opportunities, because most likely be very external, and so you have to react to them rather than saying, I'm going to be really stubborn and I don't want to make a choice here. Just allow them to come to you, which I know is difficult for Virgo, but you know. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 6th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 9th house. There could be a simple mistake that you make here with a co-worker, and it just becomes a bigger thing than it should be. You know, you're ruled by Mercury, so you should be very detail orientated, but even the best of us make issues, and sometimes we don't double check emails. But for you specifically, there could be an issue there. I'd also say just be mindful of your physical health as well, because sometimes we can ignore things and say, I'm going to grit my teeth and get on with it, and actually we probably shouldn't ignore things. I'm saying this from personal experience, and I ignored a problem with my tooth because I thought, I can't be bothered to pay that money. It'll be fine. It'll probably go away. And then it just got worse. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 7th house. So a lot of Pisces energy for you this month, which will be in your 7th house of committed relationships, the people that you're working with, contracts, commitment, all that good stuff. So this is where you're able to communicate that you love somebody. And actually it's so funny because I know quite a few Virgos in my life, and I'm like, they're not going to be telling people that they love them. And then I got comments on my TikTok that were like, Virgos telling people that they love them and being poetical. Who are you talking to? And I'm like, yeah, maybe I was being a little bit hopeful there, but maybe there's some really nice Virgos out there that are actually quite poetical. I think I'm going to keep the hope that there are, right? I don't want to discriminate. I'm sure that's just a misnomer, right? So this is really good for emotional intellect and being a bit more sensitive. So it's a good time to tell somebody very close to Valentine's Day, hey, I love you, or being a little bit more sort of compassionate in that way. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 6th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 9th house. Very similar to what was happening on the 5th. There just could be an issue. It's not necessarily related to detail. It's more about sort of relationships and the way that we are interacting with people. You know, something is said, it's a bit frosty. It's like, what do you mean by that? And then you get anxious because you're thinking all day, do they hate me? And then actually it's nothing to do with you. It's just more that I am maybe reacting to things a little bit more sensitively because Mercury is now in my 7th house, and when people do talk to me, I'm just going to take it on a little bit more personally than I would if it was in something like, I don't know, the 2nd house. If you are a Libra, then Neptune is now in your 7th house. It's in Aries, so that's going to be there for about 14 years. I just wanted to bring it up because some people might not be aware, but Neptune is in your 7th house now. February the 3rd, though, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your 8th house. So this is the last time that Uranus is going to be direct in that sign, which is debilitated. Uranus in the 8th house I don't necessarily like. And the reason being is that it's a very volatile planet to be in a house that brings a lot of sudden events. So the 8th house brings sudden events. It can be very dark. Sometimes it's quite external, actually, lots of things that we have to react to. And Uranus is very similar. So that can bring a lot of events to you that are difficult. I also talked a lot last year about Libras having inflammation because Saturn was in the 6th house, but it does not help when something like Uranus is in the 8th house because it causes inflammation. So you have something like an inflammatory disease or something where it's like, oh, gut's playing up and I don't really know why. When Uranus leaves the 8th house, Saturn's going to also leave the 6th house. I'm telling you, health will get better. I'm not going to say it's going to be cured, but it will be better. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 5th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 8th house. There could be a mistake here that's made around dating and relationships. Could even be something related to a child as well, where it's like just having a bit of an issue with a child here. And don't really feel like what I'm saying is getting across here. It just feels like maybe I've got word vomit. I know what that feels like. And actually, I just need to be a little bit more particular with my words. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 6th house. So this is going to be more sensitive, a bit more imaginative. It's quite a good time to interact with co-workers in a compassionate way. It's also good to be nicer to yourself with physical health. Get a lymphatic drainage massage as well, especially because Uranus is direct in Taurus in the 8th house. Look after yourself. Have a really nice kind of self-care period before the pre-shadow period on the 11th, where things start to get a bit more sort of dicey there. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 5th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 8th house. Romantic ventures could be a little bit difficult. It's not necessarily like an argument or groundbreakingly bad. It's more like a anxiety, like you say something and it's like, I can't compromise on it. So if you have a relationship where maybe there's a little bit of compromise here that's needed, just be a bit more open-minded about that. Sometimes we think about our own needs because it's normal for us, but actually I think it's best for us to think about the 8th house here and that it's an intimate house where we're sharing things. So when we share things, both people have to be consulted, both people have to be understood, but you also have to know that your boundaries are important and that you don't have to put your needs aside. Again, it's all about finding a balance, which you could find increasingly difficult on this day. If you are a Scorpio, this is a pretty major month for you because you're a fixed sign. So, we had full moon in Leo on the 1st. We've got solar eclipse in Aquarius. And February the 3rd, we have Uranus going direct in Taurus in your 7th house of committed relationships, partnerships, contracts and commitments. So this is going to get you to be a little bit more open-minded about relationships. You might be really craving freedom during this time, especially because Mercury will enter Pisces in the 5th house and there'll be a lot of Pisces energy this month. So it feels like it's very flirty and fun and a bit more sort of free and not necessarily super committed. I want to put pen to paper and lock this down. So not saying that you can't have that at all if you want to go towards that, but you might be feeling a little bit more like, I don't want to be trapped, because Uranus, which is very external, it's a planet of freedom, in that 7th house is saying, I want to work with lots of different people. I want to maybe, you know, sow my world oats in different places. Don't necessarily want to be stubborn and rooted down. That doesn't mean you have to say, well, my partner 3 years, goodbye. It's just more about, okay, maybe I need elements of freedom, like going away on the weekend or having time to myself. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 4th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 7th house. So there could be a mistake made between relationships in the home here. So double check everything. There could be an issue with a family member as well. So because of that 7th house, I'd just be more mindful of it being very, very detail orientated and the fact that it will affect other people. It's not going to just affect you. It's not like a solo venture. This is something that affects other people. So if you've got things that need to be planned, like I'm going to be here at 11 p.m, double check it's 11 p.m, actually double check the day, double check the year, because this is one of those elements where I'm like, ooh, no. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 5th house. I quite like this. I mean, Mercury in Pisces is debilitated, but in the 5th house, I think it's very sort of sensitive. It's very creative. It's fantastic if you're a Scorpio that is a bit more artistic. You like to write, you like to paint, you like to just create things or DIY. It's really, really fun, and it's a bit more emotionally intellectual as well. This is kind of the time, especially with Mercury, that you might read more fantasy novels or things that you just feel like, this is really edifying me on a sort of emotionally sensitive way. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 4th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 7th house. Yeah, it could be an issue with a partner here or a family member. You just can't compromise on something. And especially because Uranus being in that 7th house, it feels very much like, because you can't compromise, you're like, oh, drop dead and die. And then it's like, whoa, what's going on here? You're being a bit more cutthroat than you probably normally would be or should be. So just be mindful that, again, it's not just you in the situation. If you are a Sagittarius, then February the 3rd, Uranus goes direct in Taurus in your 6th house. So this is the last time that Uranus will be direct in this house. It will be moving into Gemini this year, where it will be in your 7th house of committed relationships. So be mindful of that. Uranus in Taurus in the 6th house, I think, has some good kind of roots and some bad ones. For example, Uranus is going into Gemini in my 6th house, and I know exactly what that is. I'm actually going to be like moving workplace. So I feel like I know exactly what exactly what that's going to do for me. But also it can be difficult in the fact that there could be some external events that shock your physical health. So you could have some flare-ups with physical health, a little bit more sort of inflammation-wise. With Taurus, this is more likely something to do with your back, especially if you're sat down in a desk job where you need to be moving your back. Just remember, I hunch over like this. I hunch over. I had an ex that was like, every time I'd sit next to him, he'd be like, and he's like, stand up straight. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't stand straight. So I hunch now, even now, because my spine I just don't, it's really uncomfortable to sit up like that. But it's actually probably better for you. So it's things like that, the back, the neck as well, issues with the neck. If you sleep in the wrong way, you can twist your neck, and then you need massages and stuff like that. But it's also, because external, things like co-workers changing, or co-workers changing of maybe like workplaces and even like office, for example. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 3rd house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 6th house. You could make a simple mistake here with communication with a co-worker, and then it affects things like a knock-on sort of effect, like dominoes. So double check emails, particularly because Mercury in the 3rd house, Mercury rules the 3rd house, but actually it's to do with communication, writing, thought. So it's definitely where something needs to be given extra thought and extra time, because if you don't, then it affects something in the 6th house, like a co-worker. February 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 4th house. So this is where a little bit more imaginative and compassionate with family members, which is quite nice. It's a good time as well to, you know, be more DIY around the home, build things that feel cozy. I think you should use this while you can, because when we enter the pre-shadow period on the 11th and then we get to the retrograde on the 25th, things can break around the house very easily. So use this sensitive kind of energy for about 5 days before it's like, okay, fridge might absolutely blow up on me, or something along those. It might not blow up, that's dramatic, but you know what I mean? Something might go where it's like, yeah, now this thing's starting to play up. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 3rd house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 6th house. Actually, I should mention that Pisces rules things like gas and oil, so have a boiler service. February 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 3rd house squares Uranus and Taurus in the 6th house. So this is very frosty, communication's very sour because you're not able to compromise on something, most likely with a co-worker, but it can also be like getting news from like a doctor or like, you know, some kind of maybe mental health worker, and it's like, I don't know why, but I keep hearing I keep hearing the phrase like people are only will get better if they want to get better. So maybe there's something along those lines here. If you are a Capricorn rising like myself, then February the 3rd, Uranus stations direct in Taurus in our 5th house. So this is very open-minded because the 5th house is all about dating and more of the sort of fun, flirty moments, leisure pursuits, joy, basically, hobbies, children, taking a risk. Uranus is incredibly risky and volatile, so this is really getting us to get out of our comfort zone. I know what this is for me again. Really getting us out of our comfort zone, pushing us to change, and also like not being stubborn. So like letting things come to us. Sometimes we can reject things because we're trying to protect ourselves. It's a very strong egoic kind of movement that Capricorn risings have because we're like, no one's better than us, right? And then sometimes we reject pleasure, we reject love and creation because of that. So Uranus gets us to be more open-minded, which I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. It can bring external things into your life related to love as well. Like you just meet somebody randomly, but then it can also bring some sort of volatility to current relationships you have as well. Not necessarily like a breakup, it depends on what aspect it's making, but it can just be slightly more difficult. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 2nd house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 5th house. There's a kind of careless aspect to money here. Maybe you've spent money on something you shouldn't have, or someone is trying to overcharge you and you're like, no. If you overcharge me for this, then I can't enjoy myself because then I can't have money for this particular thing. So double check everything, make sure that you're not overpaying, make sure that if you get a massive bill, it's not incorrect. I think this is my water bill actually. It feels far too high for what it is. Probably that. I'm like, this is what it is for me. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the 3rd house. Mercury rules the 3rd house, but Pisces, it's debilitated. So it's kind of like, is it good or is it bad? This is where communication is very sensitive. This is fantastic for writing something more sort of fantastical or reading a fantasy book or like a romance book, for example. And I say that as somebody who's like trying to write a book at the moment, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably a really good time for me to tap into that. It's also really good for speaking to people with love and compassion. With the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 2nd house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 5th house. There's definitely a little bit of a issue here with finances and maybe children. Could also be that you're not able to compromise on financial things because maybe you're like, yeah, I want to go to Switzerland for a month, so I don't want to have to pay for that. But it's also that you might find that you're being a little bit too self-centered and you have to look out for other people. So if there's a situation in your life where it's very much my way or the highway, just be mindful that there are other people that will be, impacted by this decision. If you are an Aquarius, then you are the main character of all main characters this month because eclipse, we just had full moon in Leo in your 7th house and February. If you are an Aquarius, then you are the main character of all main characters this month because eclipse in your sign, a lot of energy in fixed signs, and also we just had a full moon in Leo in your 7th house. But February the 3rd, Uranus stations direct in Taurus in your 4th house, so again, as a fixed sign does affect you, Uranus is debilitated in Taurus. So this brings volatility to the home. So this is where you could move home, you could sell a home of somebody that you are related to, for example, but you could also try to keep an open mind about where you want to be. This normally is a transit when, especially because I've done a lot of personal readings for people with this, they often say to me, this is not where me and my husband want to live, but we don't really know where to go. Should I stay? Should I go? And Uranus kind of gives you that decision maker saying, do I want to be rooted down to this place, especially in Taurus is very stubborn and likes to build roots and likes stability, or should I take the leap? So you might have a bit of a conversation around home changes, also changes to the family as well, so people moving out, people moving in, and then maybe having to say goodbye to certain family members because they're like, no, they're moving away, they're moving to Thailand, and it's like something like that. It's not always necessarily as bad as I'm trying not to avoid to say it is, because it sounds like I'm saying goodbye to people, but you know what I mean, it's something like there's just a lot of like moving energy. When people say like there's an empty nest, it's kind of like that. People are just moving in and out a lot. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 1st house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that 4th house. So there's this very simple mistake that could be blown out of proportion here, so double check detail, especially around the house. This could be signing something for a house and then it's like, oh, I didn't look over that properly, especially as it pertains to how you're interacting with other people. So just be mindful because it could cause a bit of a chain of events that is more dramatic than it should have been. So if you have to attend a meeting, just make sure the time is right. If you have to sign a contract or look over anything, again, just cross T's, dot I's. February 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the second house, so actually moves out your first house and goes into Pisces. Much more sensitive and more imaginative. I would say Mercury in the second house is a lot better for signing contracts, but Mercury is also debilitated, so emotions can get in the way quite easily. Again, if it's something that is overly logical, leave it or get someone else to do it, because it's just not the time to be it's just not a time to be overly logical or scientific. And also it's quite nostalgic. You get sort of like swept up because there's a lot of fourth house energy, so it's like, oh, you know, remember what the days used to be like, and then it's like, okay. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the first house, which is making you very magnetic and attractive and bringing on fantastic opportunities for you, squares Uranus and Taurus in the fourth house, which is not so good. This is a bit anxious. You're not able to compromise with a family member or something related to the home. So it's very important, I'm saying this for a lot of zodiac signs, to remember that you're not the only person in the world and not everything is about you. Sometimes it's really important to note that other people get impacted by your decisions. And I think that's something we forget very easily. And then it's only when we kind of like sit back, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not the only person on earth. If you are a Pisces, then you're definitely a main character for February, and that kickstarts off this week. So February the 3rd, Uranus stations direct in Taurus in your third house. This is when you have to deal with lots of different kind of communication styles, lots of people that maybe you're like, oh, the way they talk is a little bit weird. Folk are strange, you know, like, what's that about? You're just a bit weird. So a lot of kind of like oddball energy, shall we say, quite controversial, but also dealing with various people that you live with, and also having some kind of external volatility when it comes to having to move around. So like taking short trips, having to go here, there for work. Basically, if you have something that you have to be very productive about, or that it's normally quite busy, that tends to get chucked on its head. So like a routine, for example, a daily routine gets changed because something external comes into it. Now that Uranus is direct, it's a little bit easier for you to start to understand that and have an open mind, but it also doesn't change the fact that things in your daily routine will still be a little bit sort of on its head. February the 5th, Mercury in Aquarius in the 12th house is squaring Uranus and Taurus in that third house. So there's a very simple mistake that can be made through communication. For example, like an email, you've sent the wrong thing, or it could be that you're taking out maybe a bad mood on somebody and then it's just not received well. You know, when sometimes people are like, oh, you know, kind of sarcastic, and the person's like, don't speak to me like that. And you're like, whoa, I don't know, just, sorry, I'm having a bad day, you know? And it's just like, oh, awkward. So just be careful with stuff like that. February the 6th, Mercury enters Pisces in the first house. So this is when you're able to communicate your feelings more easily. It's not necessarily good for logical contracts, but it's definitely good if you want to be extra sensitive around Valentine's Day and say, hey, I love you. I'm more emotionally intellectual right now. I'm also feeling a little bit more like amorous and compassionate. But remember, you only have this for about 5 days until we get the pre-shadow period of Mercury, because February the 25th, Mercury retrograde in Pisces. February the 8th, Venus in Aquarius in the 12th house is squaring Uranus in Taurus in the third house. A little bit frosty with communication, probably because the 5th. This is like, oh, I'm not able to compromise on something. And also, it can feel very lonely. Like you feel like no one understands your words. Mercury's in that first house now, but people don't understand my words. People don't understand that I need a certain level of understanding and love for me to be able to function properly. And if I don't have that, I feel increasingly isolated. So, especially because Venus is in that 12th house as well, it's like normally bringing harmony, but when it's squaring Uranus, it's like not necessarily the best. So, could feel a bit like a lonely hermit type of day for you Pisces. But I don't necessarily think that's the worst thing in the world, because I think maybe you need some days to be on your own, because Mercury is going to start to bring lots of dramatic things to you this month, where you might actually be thankful for a few days where you're just in yourself a little bit more. Okay guys, that was the weekly horoscope for the 2nd to the 8th of February. I hope you enjoyed and you found it helpful. Leave any comments below if you want anything clarified, or like what you felt about the transit. So you know, apprehensive, how was the full moon in Leo for you? And yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.